Welcome to the City of Florissant Podcast, where we talk anything and everything related to the beautiful city of Florissant.
Hi, everybody. My name is Savanna Burton, and welcome back to the Florissant Podcast. I'm sitting here with Jimmy and Kirstie, and we're going to be talking about our powerlifting seminar, different types of workouts, and our renovated fitness center. Thank you guys for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, for real.
Of course. If you guys want to go over your names and qualifications and kind of how you got started in fitness, that's how we'll kick everything off today. So.
Sure, yeah. I'm Kirstie Chase, and I do work at the James J Eagan Center as the center director. My background in fitness, I started at SIUE as an undergrad in exercise science and then pursued my master's in exercise science. I'm currently pursuing my doctorate in exercise science as well. I've been personal training and group fitness instructor for about 10 years. And I just love movement, and I love helping bring people to movement overall, so.
That's awesome. Where are you getting your PhD again? Sorry?
University of North Carolina, Greensboro.
Online or obviously?
Yep, online.
Awesome.
Yep.
Cool. I was like, it's very decorated. I was impressed. Hi, I'm Jimmy Freeman. I'm currently the director of team training and programming at Output Performance in Afton, Missouri. How I got into fitness, like Kirstie, is I got my exercise science degree at Lindenwood University, got my master's in business administration at McKendree. That's kind of where I got my bearings, where I was doing my GA-ship in strength and conditioning in the weight room there. And then I'm also currently the co-state chair for Missouri State Powerlifting. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining me, and I'm really excited to actually learn a little bit about powerlifting and everything. I used to work out, and then I got hurt, and now I don't. So it'll be nice to hear the different types of workouts and lifting and everything. So we have a strength training and powerlifting class coming up on the 29th of October. Can you kind of describe what strength training and powerlifting is and the differences between that and bodybuilding and weightlifting?
Sure. So probably as Kirstie and I know, like when we work with clients, like if we get somebody new that like wants to work with us, like if they have like a very low like training age, like they've never worked out, they're like a couch to 5K person, we may just do like general fitness training. So that may range to just body movements, just keeping their heart rate up, making the workouts like fun, and just teaching them how to move right and move often. Powerlifting and strength training, as that is a good tool in most of our tool belts as a trainer and coach. You know, like a person may not start there. They may getting there on their journey too. Like, hey, like a barbell. Like we all know that. Like if we recognize a gym, like if we're like, hey, we're going to go to the gym, most people are going to know like, oh, there's dumbbells and barbells, right? Mm-hmm. Correct. So a person may not start there, but they may end up there and continue their journey and veer off into different routes, you know, depending on what the person's goals are. Most Gen Fitness is like, hey, I just want to improve body comp. I want to feel good, look good, you know, improve my health and wellness, or like maybe get off some medications or something. Mm-hmm. But usually, or at least with most of my clients in the past years, they find the barbell and they get addicted. They're like, oh, I can add more weight on the bar. Oh, like my body weight's going down. Or, oh, like I just broke a state record. I'm like, yeah, I didn't even know that either. So, so that's, you know, we want to talk, I guess, with that is like, what's the differences? I would say more powerlifting strength training is more, can you move more load, or a load that's on your body or you're pushing against more and more frequently, and improve your strength, like strength to mass or something like that. Bodybuilding is more like aesthetics. Mm-hmm. And then like, what did we talk, the other things of weightlifting? Weightlifting is still kind of I consider powerlifting and weightlifting, they're brother and sister. Or Olympic lifting or weightlifting is that was the original. Mm-hmm. I think weightlifting started in like the 50s or 40s. I'd have to look back, but the powerlifting didn't actually start until like late 60s, if I'm not mistaken. And believe it or not, I'm getting a little bit of a history and sound like a nerd here for a second. Powerlifting used to be called the odd lifts. When I say odd lifts, what does that mean to you guys? Like, you're like, what does that mean? Like, what would that be?
Like out of left field.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like weightlifting, we know today, most of us in this room, is like the clean and jerk, or the snatch and the clean and jerk.
Yeah.
So the snatch is where you throw it up over your head. The clean and jerk, you catch it in a front squat, and then, you know, a jerk, a press. The odd lifts, when these lifts were happening, or these competitions, they would do like, you know, the strict curl or the single arm deadlift or so it was movements in those competitions that like veered into like, hey, we can turn this into a competition itself. And in weightlifting, you know, it's clean and jerk and the snatch. There's other, I'd say, assistant movements to help those movements in the squat. the press, the deadlift, those help with those movements. So that's kind of how powerlifting started. So to circle back to like how people get into it, these big movements are huge for training, because why would we want to do, as I call them, to like someone that's like not like, if I don't want to go over their head, they're compound movements. So they're multi-joint, a lot of muscle mass. So they're recruiting more muscle. It's going to burn more calories. It's going to be more efficient. Like if I would tell you, Savanna, like, hey, if I wanted you to work on your lower body, or you came to me like, hey, I really want to work on my lower body, and you're like, I'm still new. I'm like, hey, like, yeah, we got to start with like leg curl, leg extension, simple single joint stuff. And then like, hey, like we need to get into where more of your body is moving, like a body weight squat, a front squat, a goblet squat. You're going to get more out of that than those single joint movements. Correct? Yeah.
I should take notes on these because I love
you got
lower body
you
workouts.
got the professionals in here. Yeah. But yeah, that's, if that makes sense. I hope that, yeah. Well, Kirstie, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that's a great definition of all three of those. And like you said, people get into bodybuilding, powerlifting, Olympic training from that general fitness perspective. And I've had that same experience that you've had of when they find a barbell, it's addictive. You find out what you're capable of. You experience potential that you maybe didn't know you had prior to starting to train. And yeah, the powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, and then bodybuilding, the only other thing I would add would just be it's a different endpoint. Powerlifting, people are really focused on that strength building, those 3 big lifts, squat, bench, deadlift. The bodybuilding, like you said, is very aesthetic in nature. So it's, focusing on that muscular hypertrophy. People, it's more of the way someone looks at that end goal. And that Olympic weightlifting is usually a very competitive, like you said, clean and jerk and things like that. But yeah.
Yeah. I would add to like kind of even clear it up is like, it's interesting because you're very smart. I was like, oh, wow,
As are you.
Very decorated. I'm impressed.
As are you.
Powerlifting, so weightlifting, it's very fast. It's power is, speed oriented. So weightlifting, I would consider more power, because when I train my high school or volleyball players, and because that's what I do a lot through the week, is I train volleyball, baseball, field hockey. When we do power development, we may do variations of a snatch and a clean, because it takes a lot of technical proficiency with the weightlifting.
Very
yes,
explosive.
exactly. Yeah, but when you think of powerlifting, and or coordinator here, Chris would know, like, powerlifting can sometimes not look fast. It can look like a grind movement. Yeah. So it's interesting they called it powerlifting. So to this day, I guess odd lifts just does not sound appealing and marketable.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. But as you said, like, they all have similar goals. Like you said, bodybuilding has more hypertrophy, it's very more strict in the nutrition and diet side.
Very true.
I would assume you would agree.
Yeah.
But they're all in the same arena. Like, they're all these types of clientele that have these similar goals are going to train in the same facility. They're they may have similar exercises they're going to do, but the end goal is going to be different.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
So I know we kind of talked about the different types of weightlifting and bodybuilding and things like that. Can we talk a little bit about functional fitness and how exercises like squatting and deadlifts and things like that are beneficial for people of all ages?
Oh yeah, totally.
Certainly,
Yeah. So I'll use an example. Like, so we all trainers are going to train like, youth to geriatric population. I use kind of the like, hey, functional fitness, like my client Sally Stevenson, she's 70. Her goal is like, I want to be able to. This makes me, because it cracks me. It's like, Jimmy, I work at the food pantry every 4th week, and I don't want the other girls to tell me get out of the way to pick up a case of like cans. So I teach her how to hit. Yeah, I teach her. We keep her consistent with her hip hinge movements, her squat movements. So that's our goal. It's more maintenance, but like, it is functional, because like she has to bend over, pick up. She has to make sure she's in proper biomechanics to help make sure she doesn't hurt herself, with keeping the spine neutral and stuff. So yeah, but she also is like, well, I just want to lift heavy today. I was like, Stanley, we can't do that, but I'll let you. But so yeah, so with these powerlifting style movements, the squat, the bench press, the deadlift, there is carryover with movements we do in our daily activity. Yeah. Now it does get extreme though, sometimes, because in powerlifting you want to do a true 1-rep max. So, but when we're training these people, then we teach them like, hey, these powerlifting movements are very functional. Like, you can tell them like, we don't have to go balls to the wall every day. Like, we may just like, hey, let's practice, but hey, let's push it a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I would add to that, functional fitness, to me, it's the idea of our bodies are meant to move. We move every day. What we do every day at the house, we pick up groceries, we put things away, we sit down on our couches. So functional fitness is really about training to be able to move better in our daily lives. And this can range from, like you said, kids, if they're participating in sports, or if they're sitting all day at desks, we're getting them moving, getting them active. Adults that work behind a desk, being able to make sure that you're maintaining strength, maintaining that mechanics so you can live a better life. And even to, like you said, geriatric populations, still maintaining that strength to be able to, live long into your life and not have to necessarily rely on anyone else to support you. So it's important for everyone. There's no person that functional fitness isn't important.
Oh yeah, with the client I brought up, I think her bigger goal is like, I can do stuff on my own. I don't care how much I lift.
Independence.
But it's the independence.
Right.
So I just think that's super cool. Yeah. But to add to that, with like this seminar we're going to do, this is something I really want to promote too, is when we do this seminars, like, hey, like, you can use these tools in and out, like in the gym and outside of the gym too. So
exactly, yeah, it carries over in the gym. It's sort of your lab for life, you might say.
What do they say, like tools in your tool belt?
Yep, tools in your tool belt. It's all those catchphrases, but it's so incredibly true. It just helps with overall quality of life and satisfaction and independence.
Oh yeah.
So I'm gonna kind of go off script here, and what would you say to somebody who's nervous about going to the gym? Because I know, as somebody who was going for about 2 years, I was really nervous going in there, starting out, with the gym culture and being afraid of what people might say
That's a good
or
question.
think.
Yeah.
How do you encourage somebody who's never been in a gym before to be comfortable in that setting?
Certainly. Most every client I've ever worked with has expressed that exact same thing. And the thing that I've always told people is, well, if you're nervous, so is everyone else. You're, and knowing that everybody else is nervous and really focusing on, thinking about whatever everybody else is thinking. If you're able to turn that in and think, everybody else is kind of worried about that, and we're all here together, and we're all here working to improve our lives. That's often been the thing that I would tell clients. I don't know if you would.
Well, no, like I said, that's a really good question. So like with my gym, we're considered an athletic development gym, but we do train people of all populations. So I've had new people, they'll come in and, I do promote my clients on Instagram inside the gym and my remote. And I do have some really strong male and female lifters, and they'll be like, man, that's really intimidating. I don't know if I can. It's like, those people started where you're about ready to start. Yeah. We all started with the bar. I tell people too, it's like when they ask me, it's like when I was competitive, like the most I ever squatted was like, I think 771. And then they said
that's amazing.
It was back then. It's not now. I can't do that today.
I was going to brag, but not anymore.
But they're like, well, so I'm like, I do my normal dynamic warm up. I may foam roll. I may do some like prehab stuff, but it's like, I still start with the bar every time I warm up. Or every time I start my workouts, depending on what I'm doing. So like, we all start somewhere. So don't be intimidated. If anything, these people that may, like if you walk into a gym, Savanna, right? Yeah. If you walk in there and there's people of all walks of life and all skill levels, they're probably going to be like, hey, good job coming in, kicking, snapping necks, cashing checks today. Like for real, like they want you to be in there.
That's so true. It's such a supportive environment. Usually, I mean, most people are very encouraging, and they're happy to see people, growing and becoming stronger and more capable. And that's always a good reminder.
I like that. I actually did have a really good experience, but I just happened to go to a gym where the trainer was somebody I knew from high school. So
it's usually never, yeah.
It ended up being a really good experience, but I know the days that I knew he wasn't going to be there, it did make me nervous going in there, even though I knew the culture was pretty positive overall. So what are the pros and cons of working with a coach or a trainer versus working from a template or an app?
So this is where you're going to have to keep me like, come back to reality. Don't go in the weeds, and I'm sure you will too. So
Off on a tangent.
So like at the seminar, I will talk about like this too. Like, because, as a coach, I do want to promote working with a coach, because I'm assuming you worked with a coach too in your career, or worked with a mentor. The pros and cons, and I'll start with not working with a coach. The affordability. Us coaches, this is what we do for a living. But we also know, like, we want to change people's lives. We want to mentor these people, like as my mentors did with me, and I'm assuming your mentors did with you. but it's also I'm trying to think of the word too. Like, so like example, like let's say someone comes up to me at the seminar and they're going to be like, okay, hey, I saw these applications. I saw Juggernaut training systems. I saw Renaissance periodization. I saw this and this. What are the pros and cons? I'm like, well, you're going to probably get gains, as they would say. You don't hear that term anymore, like gains, bro. You're going to get progress, but you're eventually going to get as much as you can squeeze out of that, because templates are templates for a reason. They're very
basic.
Very basic.
Catch-all.
Yeah, catch-all. I mean, like, I'll use an example. Like, when I do my team training, we do templates because we work with so many people at once. I cannot make it individualized. And I'll use an exercise physiology term. All training templates may work for people where we're all going to respond differently. So what we program for you, you may get some benefit out of it, but if Kirstie did the same thing, she may get some benefits out of it somewhere else, and I may see some or none. So you may respond to some type of different stress. So the stress is so blanket. Does that make sense? Like, so like example, and I don't want to bash Juggernaut because I've learned a lot from Chad Smith over the years, is their volume. And when I say volume, that's like the total work done in like a training session based on like an exercise or total work. Sometimes the volume may be too high, it may not be enough. So it may be overwhelming to some people with these templates. But it's cheap because they're like, oh, well, I just pay $5 a month. It's super cheap. But, working with a coach can be pricey too. I mean, do you have anything to add to that? Because this is where I'm going to go off into the weeds.
I'd say you're exactly right. The affordability factor is definitely a pro for doing a template or an app or something to that effect.
Yeah. Now the cons, basically, like I said, you could get hurt, you could just get frustrated, because I've seen people over the years, they'll like program hop. I'm like, I didn't like this one. I liked how this made me feel. Or, like my arms really look good in this workout, or whatever. But now the pros of working with a coach, and I'm really going to promote this, obviously, is like just the education. Because I tell people today, like, so my big mentors is where I learned a lot of my grassroots is he was I'm going to mess this up. At one point, I think he was the teen junior IPF, that when I say IPF, International Powerlifting Federation. So that's like the big one, or now, well, it was the big one, and I will talk that we're not in the IPF anymore. Sorry. And I can go into why, and you're going to be like, what? But I don't want to get into the weeds. So he learned a lot. His name was Zach Cooper, and he was actually one of my first coaches when I was in high school, and I reconnected with him. But I learned so much from this guy. And I tell people today, like, I learned a lot of like theory and application, or theory in my exercise science studies, but I learned way more of practical application with my mentors. And he taught me a lot of grassroots of like how to program differently for people, how to like work with these styles of training methods between linear, undulating, or this and that. And then Jeremy Hartman, I worked with him a couple years ago, learned a lot from him, and he's a world champion powerlifter. But I wanted to find coaches and mentors because I wanted to be like them one day. That was my goal in life. And this is actually how I got into this industry, is like, because I was believe it or not, I wasn't always a powerlifter. I was a thrower. And I threw at Lindenwood, All-American, all that fun stuff. But I wanted to keep learning how to get better as an athlete, a strength athlete, or whatever, and give back to what I may have not had back in the day. And that's what we do at Output, is like, we want to give these kids what they couldn't have had. Because, because what sports did you do growing up? Because you just look athletic.
Soccer, track,
yeah. What did you do in track then?
100 meter, 200 meter.
Did I say what I did in track? I was going to
Yeah.
Thrower.
Dang it. I was going to say I was a pole vaulter.
I tried pole vaulting.
But that's, that's the big pro. I think people think like, oh, well, it's really expensive. Like, yeah, but you're going to work with someone that can provide you with education too, that you could maybe get into this industry, and it's more individualized, and it's like a connection too. Because we, AI or the applications, like, they don't know how you feel day to day. Because my clients, I will always ask them like, hey, how are you feeling this week? Or hey, are you feeling good? Like, how's the stress? Like, an example, I train a lot of college and teens, and they deal with stress in and out through the day, and like even my master's lifters. An application don't know how to adjust that for you. Right. So it's the human connection is always going to be more valuable than software, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would add to that working with a coach, like you were saying, is that individual connection. It's going to support social support. You're going to make, and like you're saying, adjusting that day to day and being able to tweak based on what the client is going to need. It's just super important.
So we've talked a lot about working out in general. what advice would you give to somebody who has seen burnout before? And would you say that powerlifting style of training sees less burnout or more? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I did bring this up because this is something I've talked about with one of my fellow coaches that I work with, because he's also a powerlifting coach. He's not as active as I am. He trains a lot more like he's really good with the geriatric population, but with teams. But we've seen this too. And this is why I wanted to bring this up. And I do want to talk about this because we're probably going to see a lot of newbies, I'm assuming, at this seminar, right? Or people that are really like, oh, you've got a brand new, it's so sparkly in this gym. I want to use all this equipment.
We hope so.
Well, yeah, we're pinking cross fingers. So burnout, yes, that can happen in a lot of different sports. I did it. It happened to me in track, especially in college, because when you're in the college athletics, like it's almost year round compared to like the high school setting. But burnout, I will admit, it can be high, but you have to prevent it. And how you do that is, not training the same way all the time. As all of us have been different sport athletes. Like when we were in our off season, what did we do?
The opposite of what we did when we were in sport.
Exactly.
Something very
so you have
sport.
to do something different to get your. Like go swim or go build a barn or something. Go do something different that's not related to, because we've all been there. Like I'm assuming you train in your facility, right? Or do you go to another gym when you want to go get your workouts in?
My basement.
You're smart. So that's the thing. Like when you're always coming to the same four walls and looking at the same barbell and you're doing the similar movements, it can be tedious, especially when you don't see progress. And we've all been there. Oh yeah, there's times where I've plateaued. There was a year where I didn't add any weight on the bar. And part of it was burnout. Part of it was probably should have fixed my recovery. And I do want to talk about that today, because that's a hidden thing people forget. It's not always about going hard and eating a lot. It's like your recovery. Recovery is the end all be all tool of performance. But ways to prevent burnout, like I said, like find ways to change it up. Find ways to, like, if you're done competing, or even if you're just like you've been doing the same type of training in the facility or in Florissant, maybe like, hey, today or this week, like I'm gonna go practice like intervals in the pool. Do you guys have a pool? Hopefully you do. Okay,
Yeah,
good. Because I was like, oh yeah, go practice in the pool and you don't have one. All right, go outside, or and maybe like, hey, this a month of training or my workouts, like I'm gonna get away from squatting. I'm going to go do leg press, or I'm going to go do like just lunges, or going to do some type of variance of something that's going to stretch, but change it up, making fun, or go do a group class for a while. That's what I tell some of my clients is like, hey, we've been doing the same thing for about 8 months. Like this next month, like I'm not going to have you barbell squat. I'm going to have you do this movement. They're like, why? Like example, I have a teen national champion from this, and he's, he's a teen, but God love him, he works hard. But I tell him, like, Aiden, his name's Aiden Taylor, I said, I can't do the same thing. You've become kind of advanced for a 17-year-old. So it's like, hey, we're going to do belt squat, but this time I want you to do this. But the second half of your workout, like he works out in his mom and dad got him this glorious home gym. But I'm like, you need to go outside and do something, dude. Go talk to chicks or something. Get out of the gym. But he's like, and then he's like, oh, hey, like, I'm kind of having fun again, or like, hey, my SI joint stuff, he's been dealing with that a little bit. I've been trying to change that up. He's like, yeah, man, we have to change it up all the time. You cannot squat bench dead all the time. It is a great tool, and it's a basic tool. It's been around for years, but you got to change it up. Another thing I see, and maybe you guys will agree with me, Instagram, social media. I hate to say this, it's been a great tool for how we advanced most of our careers, our industry, connecting with others. But that's something I see a lot currently in a little bit of the trends, is a lot of people, like you said, Savanna, you don't want to feel intimidated.
Yeah.
A lot of my clients, especially my young teen females, they compare themselves to other females that are stronger or like more aesthetic. And I'm like, who cares? Get off the phone. Don't worry. In the end, you're competing against yourself or training against yourself to get better, not Joe Schmo or Susie Q or whatever. Who cares? But I know that that's been a way to motivate people as well. Like, oh, wow, look at where this person started from A to B. But it's also, it's a double-edged sword, in my opinion, social media. And I think you guys could probably agree with me on that.
Yeah, and I would add that in terms of the burnout, we want fitness to be lifelong. I'm sure you would agree. And stopping now and then and not continuing something to come back to it, to re-fall in love with it, that kind of supports that lifelong goal of maintaining fitness and just continuing to love what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think another thing too that could help prevent burnout is building a community with friends and
social
family.
support.
Social support too. So that's the other side of the coin with that, is that's something that you could probably renovating this rec centers too is like getting people together, maybe starting a club, like a barbell club. Is that something what you guys maybe want to do? Like a strength?
That would be a wonderful goal. Yes, that's something that we can.
Yeah, take my idea. I've been trying to do that for a couple of years. It comes and goes.
It gets like-minded people together and to support one another and kind of make a comfortable atmosphere.
I still hang out with the people that I went to the gym with before because other people don't understand that situation we were in together and trying to improve our bodies and feel better physically and mentally, kind of with the social media thing.
Yeah, something that you're sharing with another person or a group of people.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll say some positives. So like this female client that I have, Wendy Hester, she found me, believe it or not, and I don't know how, and because I was like, why am I being talked about by a bunch of old ladies? No offense. But it was after we reopened from lockdown. I can't remember what the group was called. It was on Facebook. But there's just a giant support group of all these like master level athletes. And when I say master level, that's like 40 and up. There's like M1, M2, blah. And it's just she showed me, I'm like, they talk about like, oh, hey, I got to work with this person today, or oh, I hit this PR today, or oh, I got to go to this clinic today. But how this lady found me was like, hey, I'm looking for a coach in St. Louis. And some lady brought me up because I guess I was up and coming then. But then where I'm going with that is like she still communicates of what she's been able to do with me and in her own training. Like example, this lady, when we started, she couldn't even bodyweight squat. Okay. And then she deadlifts. It was like, oh, it's impressive. And she's like, yeah, I've been working with this trainer. She actually worked with, and he's like, he's a jiu-jitsu guy and he does a bunch of CrossFit style stuff. And we didn't talk about CrossFit's kind of like a hybrid of all things. I call it the glorified PE class. Nothing against CrossFit because I support CrossFit and I got good. But that's the best way to describe it to like, if you're like, what's CrossFit? It's like, well, think of PE, but way more advanced and aggressive and people really love it. So she wanted to get into powerlifting, and I remember when I saw her bench, and this like she's 57 now, and she's 55, and she just benches 155 like it's nothing. I'm like, are you kidding me? Wow. But anyway, when we why I tell this story today is because it's crazy to see. I tell her, I'm like, Wendy, you have no idea how cool your story is right now. And I'm gonna just do it real quick so I don't get it. But she started with me, couldn't even bodyweight squat with a bar. Like she would fall over, just her balance, her kinematic awareness. And when I say like she couldn't feel herself move in time and space. But we did her first meet. She's like, oh, I want to do them again. We did another meet. Gets breast cancer. Can't compete. Can't compete. She conquers breast cancer. Then we improve her lifts. And then we improve her. She breaks 3 state records. Now she's like 5 kilos away from nationally qualifying. She's like top 20.
Wow.
That's a success story.
And she's like, man, I just want to keep getting better. I want to keep getting better. I'm so frustrated. I'm like, Wendy, or her name's Wendy. It's like, we can always, and this is what I would tell at the seminar with all these people, like, don't forget, progress isn't a straight line. It's going to be up and down, up and down. I'm like, you have the greatest picture you can post people of what you've accomplished. You couldn't even squat the bar. Now you're squatting 250. Now look at you're benching 150 consistently. You've broken multiple state records in the deadlift, and you're like on the pinnacle of qualifying for the national event. And yeah, it's like, so remember, you don't think about what's in front of you. Think about what you've accomplished, and that would go with any general fitness client, bodybuilding, powerlifting. Like, look where you started and look where you're at now. Yeah.
I think that is a great takeaway. If that's all anybody takes away from this, that is it. Look at where you've been and where you are now, not what's in front of you and how much farther you feel like you have to go. Yeah. Because that's just not going to help. Awesome. I don't even, that's so great. I love that story because
she'll probably, you talking about me on your podcast?
I love that story because like we talked about before, social media is so hard on people in the gym and just in general, and having stories like that being shared, that's the kind of stuff that needs to be put out there. So I know we've talked about it a little bit, the renovated facility, our fitness facility. Kirstie, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Certainly, yeah. So opening, I believe it was mid-July, both the JJE and JFK fitness centers were completely renovated, including walls, floors, mirrors, brand new equipment. So it's specifically at JJE, we do have 3 power racks, and then as of yesterday, actually, 3 platforms that have gone in. So we are able to host all of these movements, powerlifting, body building, and weightlifting. But that's not all we can offer. We offer something for all fitness levels, old, young, injured, beginner. And we've got, weightlifting machines like we were talking about at the very beginning, introducing someone to fitness. We do also offer a number of cardio pieces as well. So bikes, high intensity interval pieces, like rowers, treadmills, things like that. So we truly do offer both at JFK and JJE tools and toys for
So are
everyone.
they like 2 different facilities? Are they connected or like
2 different facilities, and anybody with a membership, resident card, daily rates, you can access both of them.
I live in Baldwin. I may have to come out. We get it for a non-resident. That sounds pretty cool.
Absolutely.
We actually have really great facilities, and I have not used them yet, but that's mostly because I'm out here all the time. I work here. All right. So is there anything that we can expect at our strength seminar that's coming up?
Yeah, my goal or the outline that I've got a rough draft on. I want to obviously kind of what I'm doing in this podcast, like give a quick history of like how powerlifting came to be, why people train that way, why people train that way, and maybe why it can be suggested for different populations. And I'll go over kind of that, and then like how that like if we all stood up, like we're not going to be the same height, our bone structure is going to be different. We're all not going to move the same. Like our squat patterns aren't going to look the same, our bench patterns. So I'm going to kind of give like, hey, if me and Kirstie squat together, we're going to look different when we squat. And here's some rules of thumb.
We should test that when we get done.
We should. I hit a heavy session the other day. Like I was demonstrating I was doing med ball squats with my young boys, and then the owners in my gym were like, "Whoa, Jimmy, what the heck? You can't even squat to ball." Sorry, man, my hamstring's so tight. I know it's
very sore right now.
That's I kind of want to do that. I'm hoping the goal too is like if we can really do a good hands-on experience, like a practical experience. I think that would make, hey, could this be a reoccurring thing, even too with other coaches and trainers at your facility? Like, hey, because this is how you build a community. This is how you build it. Like, hey, this is something we're offering is this strength seminar. Like, we want you to come here. We want you to better your life. But then I'll talk about that. I'll talk about how to get into the rec center and like how to maybe work with a trainer, like how to start, how to not feel like intimidated, like you said, Savanna. And then I'll go over like, hey, here's ways to prevent injury. Here's ways to like, if you want to work by yourself, how to write your own program. Here's how you would maybe work. I thought about trying to bring like, hey, here's like some local coaches are like, hey, there's this lady that's like in the room that we're like promote you. But that would be the goal. And then I'll probably do like a Q&A at the, because like, hey, people may ask like, hey, how do I find this? Because that's usually how people find trainers and coaches and places like that. I didn't know this place offered this.
And how do they sign up for the seminar?
Certainly. So they can sign up either at JFK or JJE over the phone. The cost for residents is going to be $25, and then the cost for non-residents is $35. But yeah, give us a call, stop by, and we can certainly
and I think it's from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., correct? Yeah.
9 a.m. to 12
on Saturday, October 29th.
Fun 3 hours, yeah.
And a quick question that I know you talked about, bringing up personal coaches and personal training people that you know in the area. Jimmy, do you offer that at the 2 rec centers? And
yes.
Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, certainly. We are in the process of revamping some of our personal training prices and packages to make them more affordable and more accessible to everyone. So we're in the process of getting those released in the next probably maybe month or so, and then bringing on some new trainers and really kind of building that up. So please, check in with us, and we're really working to promote that.
Well, awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining me and for sharing all of your knowledge. And I look forward to the seminar and hopefully having you back again to do some more.
This has been a blast. Thanks, guys, for having me.
Thanks for having
us. Of course.
Yeah.
Don't forget that our strength seminar is happening on Saturday, October 29th from 9 a.m. to noon, and you can sign up at either JFK or JJE. Thank you guys again.
Thanks.
Have a great day.